Amid glaring social and economic challenges threatening the overall quality of life in South Africa and the looming 2024 elections, in the highly anticipated January 8 statement, the ANC has highlighted an immediate action plan comprised of various factors to turn the country around, including renewal, employment of the youth, the fight against corruption, as well as the strengthening of the tripartite alliance, to name a few.
Thousands turned out for the January 8 statement at the Dr. Petrus Mulemela Stadium. The ANC has come from its elective conference where the new leadership was tasked with presenting the January 8 statement. The statement is a priority plan for the governing party for the year ahead. Earlier, the leadership started at the Vryhoek Church where the party was founded. A promise to act.
It is a national crisis that the unemployment rate among young people who are aged between 15 and 24 years is nearly 60%. And this has to be addressed with urgency that it requires. The government that we lead has prioritized the employment of young people.
Another issue of concern in the country is load shedding, and the president has promised that the ANC will do everything in its power to end it. This includes tackling sabotage, theft and corruption at power stations. The party says while discussions are ongoing on the basic income grants, the 350 SRD grants will continue. Another promise to renew the party.
We do not pursue the path of renewal for its own sake, but we do so that we can drive our energies to solving the pressing problems facing the people of South Africa. Renewal process yena, it is irreversible. It is irrevocable.
The president has recommitted to fighting corruption and ending racism. The yet unresolved reconfiguration of the alliance took center stage again. With the party facing electoral decline, it has urged voter participation.
Voter participation has been going down over the years. We now need to upgrade it. And unless we reverse this trend, we will have great difficulty as the African National Congress of ensuring that our majority is retained.
Kani Mapanga, SABC News.
Well, for a little bit more on the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa's January 8 statement delivery, we're now joined by political analyst Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, Peter. Thank you for inviting me, and good evening to viewers at home.
All right, your reflections on listening to the January 8 statement. I have to be honest that I've heard a lot of this before.
You know, Peter, as I was listening to the president during the day, I felt the same way. My sense is that whatever the president has delivered in Mangaung is not something that is new to the nation. It's a repetition of the promises that we've had so many times during January 8 from the African National Congress. And I think the question really that was glaring for me, and I suppose for all of us as South Africans, is how long, are we going to listen to this kind of poetry that does not deliver directly to the livelihoods of South Africans, I mean, one of the key things that the president spoke about is the question of the township economy, where he is promising yet again to ensure that there is some kind of a fund. I think he calls it the Township Empowerment Fund or the Youth Empowerment Fund, to ensure that young people are absorbed into entrepreneurship programs within townships. Again, that's beautiful speak. That is amazing speak. It is enticing, Peter, as we know. The ANC has been enticing us for so long, but they still fail to deliver on these issues. And again, I think the question is whether we are going to see this kind of delivery. I mean, the damage is at a number of levels. You would have seen even with the alliance that COSATU and SACP are beginning to question a number of issues in terms of the manner in which the ANC has treated workers in the last 28 years, you know, and have treated the agenda just basically of survival of South Africans. And that has weakened the alliance. And for me, those are things that are concerning, especially as we are heading towards 2024, because we know very well that COSATU supplies a votership to the African National Congress and the SACP. And of course, then it means that if the membership of these organizations who are forming part of the alliance are not serviced well, which is generally workers in South Africa, it means then that 2024 is becoming a highly challenging route for the African National Congress. But coming to generally us as South African citizens who do not belong to any political party, again, we are left in limbo and really questioning whether, you know, the ANC is committed to doing what it seeks to be doing. I mean, you would have seen, you know, even viewers at home, as all of us were watching this poetry and this theatrical dance happening in Mangawong, that even the chairperson of the ANC was shocked to discover that the state of livelihoods of people where they were was what it was, you know, that people are still using the bucket system, you know, where they are sitting. And I think the question is, why is it that Gwede Mantashe is not aware of that? Why is it that the ANC is not aware that people are still living under those kinds of conditions? So that tells you the level of disconnection that we constantly see each time January 8th statement comes between what is said and what is being done. And I think it's just a repetition of that, Peter.
All right, so some of the resolutions that came through, and let's talk about those. One of them was cadre deployment, making sure that people perform, and that if you fail to perform, you'll be removed. But the million-dollar question, I guess, is, what is different now? Because one would have thought that that's what he was doing and could have done before. Has the game changed, that he suddenly has new power to be able to handle non-performers differently now?
Certainly the game has not changed. And I think the issue here is you can't just keep talking without putting mechanisms in place. If you need to hold public servants accountable, one needs to put a mechanism in place. I've heard, Peter, and South Africans, that KwaZulu-Natal, for example, is developing what you are calling some kind of a municipal managers board, where you're going to begin to see a thing like municipal managers being held accountable by that kind of a board, which is some kind of professionalization of service delivery within communities, where municipal managers can even be expelled if they are not necessarily delivering, like you see in other professions like doctors and nurses and teachers and so on, you know, and that is not what we've heard from the president, for example, whether that's something that can be applied at national level. Even KwaZulu-Natal is exploring this. And I imagine, you know, SALGA would also have to come in on board here, but we did not hear a lot around reviewing just the work of the South African Local Government Association, but also the issues of budget, Peter. If you are saying that you want to truly deliver on these promises that are being made through this 6-point plan, you also have to speak to the question of the budget. We know that local government receives about not more than 9%, or at least not more than 10% of the fiscus in terms of budgeting. And that already should tell us that something is wrong there, because you have a sphere of government that is closer to the people and closer to delivery, that is receiving less budget comparatively. And I think something needs to change there. And the president did not speak to that. And that's something I would say, perhaps it's important that the Minister of Finance looks at those things to say, can we revise the budgetary approach that we are using, such that local governments and districts receive a lot of budget comparatively to provinces and national, because you do not want to then saturate the amount of money that we get from our purse as a nation to provinces and to national at the expense of local government, because it does compromise service delivery. And what is also limiting is the fact that in terms of incomes for municipalities, we seem to be depending much on rates and taxes that we pay for water, sanitation, and so on, services that are already not being given to communities, and communities are angry. No one is going to pay, for rates and taxes if those services are not being rendered. And of course, then it means that you are already compromising municipalities, because those municipalities that have got leaking pipes, do not have sanitation, are using bucket systems, will not be generating revenue. So it means then already, if you are robbing them from the fiscus in terms of budgeting allocations, you are already planning for failure, right? And the president did not speak to these things, which is why then, Peter, I think that it was just a beautiful speak that does not really put practical things like that in place to say, let us put mechanisms in place to hold our managers accountable, our councillors accountable, but also put money on the table to make sure that toilets that are leaking and bridges that are falling and rivers, that are breaking down are being fixed at local level. And for me, that is the limitation of what we've had today.
All right. Looking forward, I mean, they've got 12 months to get sorted. Elections are on the horizon. Is there enough time to turn this ship around for the ANC? When you look at the top 7, it appears as if the president has greater control. He doesn't have to worry about re-election at the next national conference. And maybe he's got no fears now going forward. Do you think that he'll be able to do enough in this short period of time to turn the ship around for the voters?
Well, I mean, Peter, he is obviously trying very, very hard. And you would have seen with the Nasrec elections just within the African National Congress and the kind of conversation that he's starting to put forward to the nation, in the Bizos that he's been doing, and in Mangaung as well, trying to convince South Africans that this term is important. And we've seen the ANC has also done a poll where they are even checking whether, the charisma of the current president, Honorable President Cyril Ramaphosa, as an incumbent, carries weight. And you would have seen that at least about 68% of the votes will come just from knowing that we're voting Cyril Ramaphosa, or South Africans are voting Cyril Ramaphosa, and if he's lost, the ANC is likely to lose about at least 20 to 40% of votes in 2024, and is using that. So I think we need to acknowledge the fact that he's trying. But I don't think that in the period that we have in 2023, is going to succeed. And I'll tell you why, because there is a new NEC that is in place. For me, it feels very much like a handover, and it's sort of some kind of a transformation where you bring in young people. We are seeing also our mothers coming in there in some form. And it's a kind of an NEC that presidents didn't have, in his first term. So there's relationship building that would need to happen. There's still questions around whether there will not be betrayal, whether these people are going to toe the line and support him. Of course, it's an NEC that is seen to be having more members who are supporting the president. But there is not enough time to be able to build those kinds of relationships, especially in a context where you can't even trust members within the organization. You can't even trust members within the NEC to say they'll be able to do the work that needs to be done. The president has got a responsibility as we speak, Peter, and listeners at home, to think about the cabinet, right? To think about deploying members of the NEC, perhaps, and some people from outside, to strategic positions in government that will ensure that the renewal project is done. And there's a lot of issues around vulnerabilities, in terms of relationships that are somehow irretrievably damaged within the ANC. And when you put people then in ministries, you want to put people that are going to push your agenda. And that kind of thing, when someone gets a ministry for the first time, for example, who's never been a minister before, that person does require time in terms of induction, just require time in terms of just understanding how processes work within a ministry. So a period of 8 months and 9 months as we are leading towards 2024 elections is very, very short to be able to convince a voter to say you are then able to do that kind of work. And also the tactic that the ANC is doing in terms of deployment, they have this thing that they're doing, which I think also where you have a minister that has been doing police and then suddenly moved to education, then suddenly to arts and culture, and so on. So you don't have people embedding themselves and really deepening their understanding and capability within a particular ministry over a period of time. And of course, if you change people like that, which is likely to happen with the Fikile Vilakazi, for example, because he's moving now to being the Secretary General, which means he's no longer going to be the minister, possibly, of transport, and there are many other examples. So it's a shift of commitments, of understanding, of capacity, of capabilities that requires time if one has to deliver properly in any organization. And we've got a couple of months that are left to 2024, Peter. I do not think that, or I suspect perhaps that is not going to be sufficient time to be able to show the voter that the new NEC and the new ministers, or the reshuffling, whatever it is going to look like, is going to help us to realize the promises that are being made, the 6-point plan of today, of yesterday, that as we've heard, and I think it's something that we know, right? This is just a campaign to voters that say just vote for us, and then maybe wait for the next 5 years to see if we can deliver on these issues, because this is very, very clear. It's not possible to do that kind of delivery in 6 to 8 months' time.
All right, Dr. Vilakazi, we're going to have to leave it there, but greatly appreciate your insights. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Dr. Fikile Vilakazi, who's a political analyst, breaking down for us the January 8th statement and some of the challenges that the president and the party face, particularly over the next 12 months.